Thought I was doing myself some good, a daily pill like I was told I should. Then the numbness crept into my feet, couldn't keep my balance on the street. Is it MS? My symptoms are the same. The doctor said you have B6 toxicity and your vitamins are to blame.
In Australia, products containing 10 milligrams or more of vitamin B6 are required to carry a nerve damage warning. This podcast is for awareness only and does not replace medical advice. Please consult your GP or healthcare professional for personalized care. Vitamin B6 is not checked in standard blood tests.
Hi, welcome to the B6 Toxicity and Me Diagnosis Stories podcast, and I'd like to introduce our guest today, Nicole from Tampa, and she's a pelvic floor occupational therapist.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for raising awareness about such an important topic.
Yeah, it's crazy. Who would have thought that vitamins could do this much damage?
I know. I don't think anyone is nearly aware the way that they should be, especially about this one in particular. So this is really important.
Yeah. We're actually doing stuff we think is supporting our health, and it ends up undermining it in a huge way.
Yep.
So tell us a bit about you and your story and your symptoms. And
Yeah, I really think it's important to share some of the background there because I think there could be a lot of other people with similar things going on that, especially with the community that I work with, and I'll share a little bit more about that, who could have some symptoms related to B6 that wouldn't know it, right? So for context, I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS, which stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is a type of dysautonomia, which is dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So that's where the overlap with B6 will come in. But essentially, I was diagnosed with HEDS and POTS back in 2023, and it's something that, based from my lived experience, I have been made my career helping other people who also have these conditions using my OT background. And so I did not have this B6 anywhere on my radar with the overlap with dysautonomia until I started experiencing some B6 toxicity myself and went down like a research rabbit hole learning about it and realized that a lot of the symptoms that people can experience with POTS, they can also experience if they have B6 toxicity. And so I think it's important to understand what that overlap is because a lot of people who have hypermobile EDS or hypermobility spectrum disorder, and a lot of these kind of like connective tissue genetic conditions can have what's called the MTHFR gene. I'm trying to find the right word to say, like a genetic mutation at the MTHFR gene. And a lot of times there will be holistic providers, more often than not, recommending sorry, my brain, say the end of my day here. So if I get a little foggy at times, just bear with me. They will recommend methylated B vitamins in order to help with methylation because basically if you have a mutation there at that MTHFR, which honestly a lot of people do, like I read like up to 40% or maybe over 40% of the population has that. So it's not all that uncommon. But somewhere along the line, it's gotten this reputation that it has a lot to do with these underlying conditions, chronic conditions. And a lot of the ways that they try to help with that methylation issue is give people methylated B vitamins. Well, in the methylated B vitamins, there's often high doses of vitamin B6. And so that's where this comes in for me. So I had been seeing a functional medicine provider who recommended this, and I don't really blame her. It was just kind of like a lot of things stacking up at the same time. But I was taking that high dose vitamin B6, which I believe was 50 milligrams in that supplement, which is very high, knowing what I know now. And then I was also taking like some other things that I didn't really realize had B6 in it as well, like a greens drink and like a sleep, like a melatonin, like a nighttime supplement. And then I had gotten some like intermittent like IV hydration therapy, and there was B6 in the IV. And so it just started like adding up over time because there is a lot of B6 in our food. So with B6 being in food and with all this supplementation I was doing, it was like too much for my body to handle. And so the first like telltale symptom I experienced was a lot of pain in my feet. That kind of just came on pretty suddenly, and it felt like I had woken up that morning and I got out of bed, and it just felt like my feet, like standing on my feet, it felt like I had been walking for hours, like the type of pain you have in your feet after you've been on them all day long, walking without a break. That's what it felt like, but I was not, like I had just gotten up. And so I was complaining naturally to my husband, and then somehow throughout the weekend, I came across a podcast of somebody had mentioned you have to watch out for B6 because it could be, can create toxicity. And I was like, I think I've been taking a lot of that. And then, one thing led to another. And I just had this epiphany that I wonder if this could be the issue, because the onset of that foot pain kind of started after my last IV infusion. And I think it just kind of set me over the top. So yeah, one thing led to another. And eventually I'd say about a week later, I got my blood test, and it was high, like over the levels of high. And that was without supplementation, like I said, for about a week. So I knew that my levels had to be pretty high when I did have all those supplements fresh in my system.
So how did you feel knowing that, like, you'd poisoned yourself inadvertently?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously like frustrated and confused and didn't know the significance of it. I had found a very informative Facebook group that kind of gave me a lot of answers and some things that I can look into and work on to help heal from this situation. But I guess I was more or less like unsure about what it all meant because I didn't know how long it would take to recover from this. And I think everyone's experience is a little bit different. So I wasn't sure, what I was getting myself into essentially, or what I had gotten myself into. It was, damage was already done at that point. So.
And how did it affect your work and stuff before diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would have that intermittent pain, but I also this was a time where I was feeling pretty out of it, honestly, on and off for a while. My home here, I live in Florida, Tampa, Florida, in the United States, and my home here had mold in it, and so I was dealing with some mold toxicity on top of this, and so I just wasn't feeling well. And like I said, I had been diagnosed with POTS about like 2 years prior, so I was definitely very symptomatic for POTS during this time as well. And here I thought that it was just POTS, just due to my genetic condition, because Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a comorbid condition of POTS. And I thought, oh, well, I guess it just got, it's just getting worse or whatever. But I was pretty symptomatic a lot of times, which is why I was taking the vitamins and trying to do what I could to feel better, but there was a lot of brain fog, a lot of fatigue, like eye floaters, just feeling like just generally it was hard for me to focus, and a lot of those like autonomic type of symptoms that I never would have thought was associated with taking a vitamin. So, yeah.
And so when you stopped taking supplements, how long did it take you to feel better?
Quite a while. Yeah, quite a while. It's interesting because when you read about how people are healing from this, there's like different stages that people go through. And I think they call, now, granted, this is all from based on what I've read and what people's anecdotal experience has been through, but they've kind of collected data on so many people over time. But I think they call it rebound. After you get off of the supplements, then your body kind of does this whole thing. And I felt that in full force. Like I went from having, some pot symptoms to like my heart like racing like every morning a lot. So I needed to start. I had like one medication that I had as like an as needed type of med that I didn't have to take as often, but I started to have to take that pretty much daily for well over a month to help keep my heart rate at like just a functioning normal level, because my heart rate started like going crazy when I was in that like rebound type of situation, getting off of the B6. So that was hard. It really felt like what I read about what happens after you stop taking it happened to me like pretty much to a T. Like I was like the timing and everything really started happening. Like it's pretty crazy.
Wow. So that was last April when you stopped. So April 2025, you stopped supplements.
Yeah.
So now moving forward, when you see clients in your clinic, do you look at their supplements?
I do.
And
Yeah, I warn everyone about B6. Everybody. Like not just my clients, but family members, friends. If I know anybody's taking B6, I always tell them, because it can really catch up with you after a certain amount of time. And the interesting part is that it's often recommended for nerve issues and things like that, and then it causes more nerve issues. So most people who I talk to about it, they're like, wow, I had no idea. And they're open to getting off of it. But yeah, it's definitely a scary one, and one you really have to look for and pay attention to.
Yeah. Oh. So
Yeah.
Now down the track, you're a year and almost a half back, like off the B6. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I feel a lot better. It's interesting because I never, I don't know if you did, like I don't know where you're at in your journey and if you followed like a low B6 diet. I didn't really do that as far as like following the diet necessarily. I tried to be mindful of that for a while, like not eating like too much chicken or beef like back to back to back, just because I didn't want to like increase my symptom burden too much. But I didn't like, some people track their food intake for a while to make sure that they are staying within what's called the RDA for B6. Is it like the recommended dietary allowance? Yeah. And so I didn't do that, and I would have kind of ups and downs throughout this period, which I think is normal from what I've read. It's normal to be a little, up and down with this, but I'd say that I'm more stable now than I've been, and I definitely was at the beginning. I don't really feel like I'm having like big, episodes related to that. But I did kind of question myself one time. I think it was over the summer. No, not this summer, because it's summer now. It must have been in the spring, that I was wondering, like, did I really have that? Was that real? I wasn't sure, and I ended up taking a bit of B6 in an IV. It was just such a low amount. I think it was like 2 milligrams. So it's not like a high amount, but I got that same sensation back in my feet, almost like immediately. So I was like, okay, there's my body telling me that's it. That's all I need to know. So, yeah.
I wonder if people that have had B6 toxicity are sensitive then to B6 in supplements afterwards.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, it's hard to know, like for certain, for sure, for myself, or if it was just like that my body's like, I remember what this does to me, and sent me back those symptoms right away. But yeah, I had to learn the hard way that yeah, that was real. Because sometimes you just it's even though I had the blood work showing it was elevated, and then I got blood work done 2 months later and showed that it was back to normal. It's hard to know. You just kind of question yourself: is that real or not? I don't know.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Do you, have you had your blood work done recently, or do you get it? Do you track it when you get a blood test?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't had it tested since last June, so it's been a little over a year since I last had it tested for B6. But at that time, it was in normal range.
So, if someone's listening today and it's their first time hearing about B6 toxicity, what do you want them to know?
I would want them to know that B6 toxicity does not only come from high doses of B6. Um, the interesting part is like I was taking like the 50 milligrams of B6 in that B complex vitamin I was taking, and I know that that's high, but some practitioners like wouldn't consider that to be all that high, but it really is. And I believe there are countries across the globe now who are starting to put warnings for B6. I think Australia was one of the first ones, right? And I think I just saw Canada is doing this at as low as 10 milligrams per day because there was a paper that was just put out a few days ago I saw, and was it 30 or 40% of people who were taking just 10 milligrams per day developed toxicity, which is crazy. So, yeah, you don't have to take that much B6 to develop toxicity to it. When I made a post about this and shared my story, because I just felt compelled to share recently, I had some people saying, oh, well, B6 helped me and B6 made such a difference for me. And I guess, everybody's different. So maybe there's some people who their bodies aren't as sensitive to it, or maybe their body's processing it the right way. But it seems like there's a good portion of the population who that's not the case for. And so I would just caution taking any B6 supplements. And I would also recommend reading the labels on all your supplements, not just ones that say B vitamins on them, because like I had mentioned before, one of the other supplements that I was taking was, I just thought it was melatonin, like a sleep supplement, but here it was melatonin and B6. And I've read that there's a lot of different magnesium supplements that also secretly contain B6. And then in like the food and beverage world, there's a lot of energy drinks, these like special drinks that you think like, oh, this is going to be good, but it also might contain B6. And like in my world and people who have POTS, like liquid IV is a popular electrolyte supplement powder, but it has B6 in it. So I just always things that I like to warn people about. And the same thing goes with like, different electrolyte or different energy drinks. And what's that one? It's called Body Armor. Body Armor is like an electrolyte drink that has B6 in it. And I had come across a woman last year when I shared about this who had developed B6 toxicity just from drinking Body Armor. So it's pretty crazy. And then when you read the stories in some of the groups, some people can develop toxicity from a high protein diet. So basically the more, if you're eating high quantities of the foods that have high levels of B6 in it, you might be more prone to it. So these are just some things to keep in mind, but also, I think if anybody's listening and you're concerned about this, if you have taken high dose supplements or you've done any of the other things I was just mentioning, getting a blood test and confirming and talking to your medical provider would be a good place to start, because and give you some information.
And what about, like, I've found that a lot of medical providers do not know about B6 toxicity yet. How would you go about talking to your doctor if they have no clue?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question. Thankfully, when I talked to my provider, they were open to learning and hearing what I had to say. But I think finding any sort of research you can on the topic, or finding any of these articles, these news articles that are sharing about what's happening to people and explaining how it aligns with your symptoms, especially if you have been supplementing, could be a great way to at least get them to understand what you've been going through. Because ordering a simple blood draw is not, hard on their end. But I also have heard that some people's blood draws may not always, show the full picture. So that's just also something to keep in mind. So sometimes the blood may not be elevated, but they might still be really symptomatic. Have you read that?
Well, especially for people that have given up B6 for a while before they get tested. And you can still be symptomatic for a long time after stopping supplements.
Yeah.
I have read that, and a lot of people's levels don't go down like you would have thought.
Yeah.
And
Which
that's
is
the scary part too.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess people need to go and ask their provider for a B6 test and not feel bad about it, because it's not done in standard blood tests.
No, it's not. Yeah. So it's definitely one, I think, if you have neuropathy, small fiber neuropathy, any sort of those symptoms, it should be one that should be included in those sort of routine labs. It's not often unless the provider is aware of it, right? So, but as patients, I think we're learning, especially in the population that I work with, that we really have to advocate for ourselves. Like, I think we're past the days of the doctor being the one who knows all. Doctors obviously mean well and they work hard, but they're seeing so many patients per day and basically keeping up the best we can. So by advocating for ourselves and asking the right questions and just being informed, we can, really get to the root cause of some of these things that are going on.
So a few people have said they want to hear hopeful stories of B6 toxicity and recovery. So best things about your recovery, and what advice can you give, and how do you feel now you've got on top of the B6?
Yeah.
Do you feel,
I think it was helpful knowing that what I was going through was aligning with what I was reading about as far as symptom profile, and knowing that if I, continue to stay off of the B6 and take care of my hydration and the different things that, they were recommending as far as not consuming excess B6 foods and definitely avoiding those supplements, and just really taking it easy and listening to my body, that I could recover and I would recover, right? I haven't felt those sensations in my feet at all, basically, since that one time I decided to think, oh, maybe it wasn't that after all. It really was. It for sure was. So yeah, I honestly feel like I'm feeling a lot better. My POTS symptoms honestly have been a lot better too. So could be a correlation there. And then as far as, I forget what else you had said. The hope, and then yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the B6 toxicity Facebook group, understanding B6 toxicity from Western medicine or West research, and
I had a look at it.
Yeah, so that one has a lot of information from a lot of people who have been through it, and there was it wasn't just people sharing their stories of active stuff that they're dealing with, but it was also people sharing how they got through it and being on the other side of it and feeling so much better. And that gave me hope. And I can say that like I improved and I did get better, even if I wasn't following this like low B6 diet to a T. I still feel like with time I got better. And so I think the first step is awareness. And if we're not aware of these things, then it's hard to do anything about it. So just being aware that B6 can be a problem for a lot of people, and avoiding supplementation, because there is plenty of it in food, in the standard diet, at least over here in America, that, yeah, you can recover. And just warn all your friends and family so they don't do it too.
It's even added to cereals as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I did realize recently that I was eating these, because I'm gluten free, and I was eating these because Cheerios are gluten free, and I was eating Cheerios, and then I noticed that they had B6 added to them because they're fortified with these vitamins. So thankfully, I didn't consume a whole lot, and I stopped buying them pretty quickly. Yeah.
It's just it's amazing where it goes into. And when I was in the States recently, it was in Starbucks coffee from like the supermarket. You go in and buy some versions of the Starbucks, and B6 was in that.
Wow. Yeah, they probably added as like these like B vitamins for energy, which is crazy. Like we don't need it. We really don't. We're getting plenty of that if we're eating chicken and beef and a lot of other things, carrots and
Yeah.
avocado. Yeah.
Wow. So, so anything else you want to say about B6 toxicity and to those listening?
I think just knowing that it's real, it can happen to anyone, really. Even if providers have no harm, because a lot of providers just don't know that it can cause these things. Um, it's important to look at the labels and pay attention to what you're consuming, and just know that you can get better. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. There, and I guess the other thing is just knowing that we didn't really talk about the symptom profile, but it's quite large. There's a lot of symptoms. Basically, B6 toxicity can act like a neurotoxin and mimic a lot of the symptoms of small fiber neuropathy. So basically, if the symptoms can be caused by the nervous system, which is why I was describing the dysautonomia at the beginning, then that symptom could be resulting from excess B6. So just something to keep in mind. And on the B6 toxicity, if you like Google B6 toxicity website, it should come up. There is a whole list of symptom profile on there, and it gives you a lot of information.
So you just had the burning in your feet, but yeah, with the I don't know how you say it, dysautonomia.
Dysautonomia, yeah, dysautonomia. So there's a lot of symptoms that can be caused and associated with dysautonomia, like dizziness, lightheadedness, like blurry vision, vertigo, syncope or pre-syncope, like passing out, temperature dysregulation, bladder urgency or frequency. The list kind of goes on. There's a lot of things that can be associated with dysautonomia because the autonomic nervous system controls the background functions in the body. Basically, the things that you don't have to think about. It's those automatic functions. And so anything that's, happening automatically in the background could be impacted by B6 toxicity because it's affecting the way the nervous system functions.
Do you find now if you get sick or something, your nerves react? Or
Well, as somebody with a pre-existing, dysautonomia prior to the B6 toxicity, yes. Like if you get a virus, you get sick, like it can cause like an uptick in the dysautonomia symptoms. And so can things like dehydration, lack of sleep, increased stress, like all of those sorts of things. So I don't think there's enough research on this topic to know whether or not, if you didn't have, underlying dysautonomia or pre-existing dysautonomia, if you get sick or have any of those other things happen, if it could flare your B6 symptoms. But I would be curious to see in the future if that type of research could exist. That would be, I think, very helpful and interesting to know.
And who would sponsor that research anyway?
I know. Yeah, maybe somebody someday. Yeah.
Yeah, in Australia now, Health Direct have information on B6 toxicity, so that's good.
Yeah.
But it's still really just starting to get awareness and traction out there in the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad you were able to provide a little bit of hope for everyone.
Yes, thank
no
you.
symptoms down your legs now and all.
No, I don't have any of those symptoms in my feet or in my legs. Like I said, I didn't understand the overlap with the dysautonomia, so I don't know how much of that could have been related to B6 or like worsened by the B6. But I do know that those symptoms, for the most part, are much better now, as long as I take good care of myself and I sleep and I'm eating enough, all those things, like basic self-care, foundational nervous system care is really important. And so I would say if you're, in that early recovery stage from that, any B6 toxicity, focusing on hydration, sleep, eating enough calories, and watching, at least paying attention at the beginning to what foods have B6 and what doesn't, is pretty important in that early recovery stage.
Well, thank you for being with us today and sharing your story. It's really great, and I think having people share how they got diagnosed is important for everyone, so we know we're not alone, and also create awareness about the subject. One of the ladies that wrote to me after she read my book, she was misdiagnosed with MS.
Yeah. Wow.
And she had to, this was back 20 years ago, and she did all her research herself to work out it wasn't MS, it was B6 toxicity.
Wow. That is a big misdiagnosis.
And she took the information back to the neurologist who diagnosed her, and she said, no, I haven't heard of that. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's very, very misunderstood in the medical community for sure. So more conversations like this are important to help raise awareness. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being with us today. And this is not medical advice. Of course, you've got to go see your own GP or doctor and ask them, and ask for your B6 to be checked. And yes. I think probably it's good to have it checked periodically anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. For
Along
sure.
With a few other Bs as well. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah.
And well, hopefully maybe in a year's time we'll get you back on just to chat about where you're at and how your recovery's going.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yes. Well, I'm happy again for you taking the time and having these conversations and raising awareness. It's really important, and I hope that this episode will find whoever needs to hear it and they will benefit from this information.
And thank you again.
Yes, you're welcome.
As this episode ends, here are a few important reminders. Vitamin B6 is essential, but both vitamin B6 deficiency and vitamin B6 toxicity can share similar symptoms. Blood testing, supplement history, and clinical assessment can help tell the difference. B6 toxicity affects the nervous system, so symptoms can vary widely from person to person. These may include tingling, numbness, balance problems, muscle weakness, electric shock sensations, twitching, blurred vision, bladder urgency, racing heart, gut issues, skin changes, sleep disturbance, and mood changes. This is not an exhaustive list. In Australia, the TGA requires products containing 10 milligrams and above of vitamin B6 to carry a warning about peripheral neuropathy. The TGA has also advised healthcare professionals to review vitamin B6 intake, including supplements and fortified products, when investigating unexplained peripheral neuropathy symptoms. Health Direct Australia also recognises that peripheral neuropathy can be caused by excess vitamin B6. This podcast shares personal experiences and consumer awareness information only. It is not medical advice. If you are concerned about symptoms, supplements, medications, or your health, please speak with your doctor or qualified healthcare professional.
If these conversations or my story have resonated with you, my book, B6 Toxicity and Me, is available worldwide on Amazon. Thank you for joining us today.
Looking for support with vitamin B6 toxicity? You're not alone. There are Facebook support groups where people share their experiences, symptoms, recovery journeys, and what they've learned along the way. Scan the QR code to visit b6toxicitysupport.com, where you can find links and more information.